Welcome to another episode of the EsportsNext Podcast. It is my pleasure to be joined alongside my co-host, the lovely founder of the Esports Trade Association, Miss Megan Van Petten. And today our guest is Julian Waddell. He is doing all sorts of stuff in esports, from co-founding Esports AL to being a professor at Oakwood University. Welcome to the show, Julian. First question, what is your favorite video game? I think I might know the answer.
Favorite video game, Metal Gear Solid. I love the whole series. And
Nice.
one of the things that has really, I wouldn't say that's what got me into gaming, but I would say it was pivotal for my gaming career.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure you've had a long one from playing yourself, playing with your friends, and now you're teaching students and you're involved across the state of Alabama with really leading esports. What initially brought you into the gaming and esports space?
Well, I actually love telling the story. It was actually my dad. My dad was, before esports was a thing, I would say my dad was the closest thing to a professional esports player. So
Wow.
this is the early 90s, and my dad was really into real-time strategy games. And
Hmm.
I mean, he played it hardcore. And one of the things for me, I wanted to be able to play with my dad. And at that time, not a lot of things were readily available to have these LAN parties the way that they are now.
Right.
So in order to play with my dad, not only had I had to figure out how to network our computers together, but once we networked, how to be able to create a LAN between his computer and my computer, and
Yeah.
got me into IT, which is what I'm a professor of. I'm a professor of management information systems. But if it wasn't for esports, I wouldn't have gotten into technology and entrepreneurship, because after that, I started teaching other people tech from an early age. I actually started my first business, which was surrounded around this, when I was 10. And this
Oh,
came
cool.
from esports.
Wow. And what age was that when you mentioned 10, getting into that aspect, when you were first connecting those computers and playing with your dad, about what age was that for you?
No, that was 10. I was like, so
Okay.
my dad, I would say it started around, uh, like I said, the early 90s. And it's like, so 94, 95.
Hmm.
And around that time, once I got that set up, I went to this school where I loved being on the computer, and there were opportunities for me to be able to teach other people how to set up the computers, how to network computers, and that in and of
Oh,
itself
cool.
became a business for me.
That's awesome because what you're expressing is what we share with we talk to a lot of adults about, hey, what are the educational and workforce benefits of esports, right? And very few people your age and older have the same experience that you had. That's, what you're describing is the experience that kids are having nowadays rather than, decades ago. It's pretty cool. What I'm hearing is you're able to not just say, hey, believe me, this is going to happen. You're saying this happened in my life,
Yes.
when I was 10 and through my teenage years, and has set me up with the interest and the skills that I have today that I'm passing on to the next generation.
Yes, and to be honest with you, I think, if it wasn't for esports in general, my mom my mom really wanted me to be a doctor. So,
Okay.
and
Sorry,
I
Mom.
I did not want to be a doctor, but if it wasn't for the trajectory that esports had me on, I wouldn't have gotten into technology at all. I would have taken a completely different path.
So we'll blame your dad for you not being a doctor, but for leading you into esports. I'm curious, do you know what started his gaming journey? Because that's a little more unique, all those years ago.
So one of the things that my dad used to say is that gaming helped him think. So my dad, he was a paralegal. He did paralegal work. He also did taxes, and he was an entrepreneur. That was his biggest thing. And whenever he got stuck, and that this actually will transition into how I teach now. But whenever he would get stuck on a problem that he was trying to solve, he would play a game, because um, gaming has so many parallels to actually entrepreneurship. And so, for instance, an example of that, like whenever you're thinking about entrepreneurship, let's think about you're fighting a boss, how to pivot. When you're thinking about RPG, how to allocate resources. And all of these different elements my dad would pull from to basically help him, let's say, focus on a legal brief. Or, I mean, he would literally write in his briefs references to games. And this is like
Wow.
I said, early 90s.
Wow.
And so I would watch that, and my dad would always, and this is one of the things that I loved about my upbringing, my dad would always let me read the briefs because it was so cool to him that he brought in a reference that he pulled from a game and see
Yes.
if I can catch it. And so it was those elements that got him into it because he wanted to be able to actually use the critical thinking that he had to do from the real-time strategy games because he
Mhm.
loved chess before that.
Yeah.
He wanted to be able to apply that to be able to actually help him in what he was doing with his career. And that's something that has helped me in everything that I've done from this point as a professor, as a co-founder of Esports AL, and in my work with community engagement across the country.
That's really incredible. I can picture the courtroom. Objection, Your Honor, and StarCraft 2 when I was playing last night with my son. Um, that's incredible. So going forward, help me out, chicken or the egg? What came first in your career, being a professor or co-founding Esports AL?
Actually being a professor. So that's actually how it led to it. So prior to me being a professor, I was heavily into cybersecurity. I was at the university that I work at, I was originally the chief information security officer. And prior to that, I worked in cybersecurity for NASA. And so
We see that a lot. We see cybersecurity and professors.
yes, it's like so it's like for me at least, I just loved it's like cybersecurity, just like gaming. It for me, it became this challenge that I could equate to gaming a lot. And when it came to being a professor, being able to teach, you can't just jump into cybersecurity from the standpoint of, here, read this book, you could do it. You have to always know how to pivot. It's like, because it's like, there's something in cybersecurity that we all know is like, there is no such thing as absolute security.
Right.
So our biggest thing in regards to, you have to be able to not teach just the skill, but teaching how to be security minded. And so that led me to being a professor.
Hmm.
But going back to the original question, um, I became a professor in management information systems, but it was actually my background in entrepreneurship that led me to helping to build an entrepreneurship center. So I built an entrepreneurship and esports center for our university, and we
Hmm.
use esports as a pathway to bring people in to get them to learn about entrepreneurship and technology.
Wonderful. Yeah, I'm always so excited looking at the esports space from an entrepreneurial perspective of just how entrepreneurial it is. You
Yes.
know, part of it is it's a new space, it's emerging, so there are new opportunities that haven't been captured yet. Um, you have all sorts of technologies that need to be developed or have the opportunity to be developed for all of these new activities that we're involved in. But also on the team side of things, you have this dynamic where you build a team and then the superstar branches off, starts his own team, kind of an optic to 100 Thieves sort of a thing. It's actually very similar in the skateboarding world, which is my my former life as well. But did you at Oakwood University, was the entrepreneurial system already in place, or did esports help to bring it in there? How did those things work?
So it wasn't in place. Actually, I was so I'm the management information systems and entrepreneurship professor, but I introduced entrepreneurship to the university.
Mm-hmm.
So taking it back a couple of years when I actually was a student at Oakwood University. And during that time frame, one of the things that got me into what I do now was I was an entrepreneur as a student. I used to sell snacks and I used to host these LAN parties and things like that at our
Cool.
university. And I found myself going back to how I was when I first started like teaching about different elements of entrepreneurship. That's what I promise, I never wanted to be a professor. I never saw myself as a professor. I thought that my end career would be either some form of entrepreneur that was directly connected to technology or cybersecurity, but a professor was never in my plan.
Mm-hmm.
But what I noticed is inside the academic environment, it was a great, I guess, bubble for entrepreneurship because you had the ecosystem that was necessary to harness entrepreneurial aptitude. Because inside this environment, you had your advisors, which are your professors that could help with your business instead of going out and asking and paying for consultants. You had all of the overhead covered. You had your office space, all these different things that was directly available to you, you could do within the safety of the university bubble. And
Mm-hmm.
you would be surprised as a student, if you were to ask, hey, contact somebody at EA, you'll be more likely to get a response because they don't look at the student as competition or someone that's trying to do some type of competitive intelligence. They look at the student as somebody that we're trying to mentor and help grow into the beginning of this industry. So as an entrepreneur that starts in college, it's an ideal environment for them to succeed in. And for
Interesting.
me, it allowed me to be able to develop a program. So I left, worked while going to graduate school at the same time, and then I came back to the university several years later and developed their entrepreneurship program.
And it's getting better because when you look at the university entrepreneurship departments, the strong ones, they're aligned with the local companies. It's such
Yes.
a natural win, but it's more, that's only been cultivated like the last couple of generations, or decades, excuse me, really. And now it's just, it's lockstep. It's a beautiful thing to
It
bring
is.
government, education, and business together. It's like the trifecta.
It definitely is. One of the things I was most proud of when we started our entrepreneurship center, we became a Unity authorized training partner. And like I said, our biggest thing was to train tech talent development as well as entrepreneurship to the people in that community. And so we partnered with Unity and we realized, and this is the reason why we decided to go the Unity route. So in Huntsville, Alabama, we have I think it's the second largest research park in the country, fourth largest in the world, and a lot of them are government contractors. And when you would look on places like Indeed or LinkedIn Jobs, things like that, you would see, if you're interested in gaming, all of these employers had either you needed to have a background in Unity or Unreal Engine. So when I looked into the requirements, I saw that all these people who were trying to get this training in Unity or Unreal Engine would have to leave Huntsville to go get training. The nearest place was 500 miles away.
Wow.
And what was it? There was at that time only 16 locations. And then it dropped to 12 when we applied. But we were one of 12 Unity authorized training partners in the country. And we were servicing all of the individuals that needed that certification training in Huntsville and all the surrounding areas.
That's incredible.
Yeah, Huntsville's got it going on. John, do you remember we were going to go to Huntsville? Because the Huntsville Economic Development or the city of Huntsville, Joel, he came to our conference last year. He's everywhere. We were on his show actually, and he was on ours.
Joel is awesome.
I mean, and it takes that governance piece too. It's the governance, the business, and I love entrepreneur instructors. It's so fun because it's out of the box. But there is some basics in the entrepreneur programs. I remember like some of the first ones, like out of Ball State, like that was like a winning leader in the day when I was in business school. So yeah, how exciting. Did you know about our elevator pitch program? You should bring some of your students.
Actually, I actually been sharing it. It's like for the next conference that you all are doing in July. I've
Yeah.
actually been sharing it this week to students to apply, students and people
Perfect.
in the community to apply. Matter of fact, there's an organization that we work with through Esports AL called Studio Polycraft that should be applying. And they actually placed in a pitch competition yesterday.
Wow.
They help build 3D assets and help train students to become entrepreneurs in the development of 3D assets while also assisting faculty members and faculty development to introduce tools like Blender and other 3D development assets into their courses.
So
Mhm.
cool. So
We
cool.
would love to have them
Yeah.
involved. Yeah, this each year we've done an elevator pitch competition. Megan's been doing them for decades with
I
her
have.
past associations, but it's a lot like Shark Tank.
I love
You
it.
have everybody who's attending the conference is right there in the audience listening, but then we also have very qualified judges who are not just listening to the pitches and grading them, but they're giving them these real questions of the viability of that product or service and the product
And
market fit.
investing.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
I
Most
mean, that's the funnest. It's not about winning. It's about like our pitch at, I've been known to do this, yeah, for a very long time with a great network. Money is not hard to get. Great partnerships is the goal.
No, you're absolutely right.
Long-standing support, like good money, good investors that, want to grow with you. And that's what quality over quantity. And we learn that very quickly in business.
we
Yes.
sure do. Well, question for you, Julian. Speaking of entrepreneurship and your students and such, if I am a young gamer, let's say I'm college
Oh,
age,
you are.
and I'm interested in become an entrepreneur, or I have entrepreneurial tendencies, give me a piece of advice that you would give me as one of your students.
So the very first thing that I would say is the thing that you need to focus on more than anything is the entrepreneurial mindset. And because a lot of the times as a student,
Mm-hmm.
you don't necessarily see yourself as an entrepreneur. And the reason why is because of the environment that college places around you. It's like, yes, from an unofficial standpoint, as I mentioned, it's the best environment to build your business, but the structure of how academia is specifically is you're going to college to get a job. Now,
Right.
The biggest problem, and this goes to the advice part, the biggest problem that students face is that if I'm having trouble getting an entry-level job, what qualifies me to be a CEO of my own company? It seems
Great
like
question.
that's setting me up for failure.
Yeah.
So my advice would be more so associated with, let's focus on building up your entrepreneurial mindset. What makes you an entrepreneur? Think about all the things that you're able to do now. Think about the things that you may not even consider counts as entrepreneurship. Start looking at those things, and you'll be surprised that you've been an entrepreneur a lot longer than you think that you have been. And you might have all the things that you need now to be able to accomplish the things that you want to accomplish, and you just didn't know it. And so that's the
Great
angle
point.
I would probably focus on.
Yeah, you may say, hey, all those tournaments that you helped organize,
Yes.
right? How did you get communication out to people? Oh, well, I, created these flyers and I put them out on XYZ and created a recap video and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, yeah, add a few steps, right? And then you go from just having fun with your friends to turning it into a business or something like that.
I was at a dinner last year in Vegas, and I was sitting at a table, and I realized everyone there was a multimillionaire. And I had worked with all these people for at least a decade. And they're telling their stories, and we're having this dinner, and I was thinking, I'm not a multimillionaire. So I said to the table, I said, wait, what have you guys all done that I haven't? And you know what they did? Every single one of them figured out a way to get a percentage of the Shark Tanks I did. Well, elevator pitches, Shark Tanks. I call them Shark Tanks in the day. Everyone at that table figured out a way to get a percentage of all of the winning pitches over the decades.
Oh,
So
wow.
one guy goes, I bought in because I did the development. So they sold them their product and got a piece of the action. One guy was the consultant. One guy was the coach. One guy was the investor. One guy was the strategist. And the whole table went around. Several of the guys pitched, but that's what they all had in common. They all pitched or invested in the pitch.
Yes.
And the one thing I never did was invest in it. I have always brought the people together, and I got great joy out of it. And then there was just that moment where I was like, wait, what did or didn't I do? And in this decade of time, I would be more open to now donating some of my services for a percentage. I never thought about it, but I'm also a consultant and I'm also a coach, but I'm very sensitive to what I would want to talk about, do, and be part of, even boards. Like I'm on that one board that I shared with you because I believe in this team and this university and this business model so profusely. But for the very first time, I've shifted my mindset that I could be an investor without money to invest.
Yes, you definitely can.
Yes. And that was just a breakthrough. And here I am 15 years later, from the first time watching Shark Tank, 2008-ish, to, wow, it's not that, oh my God, I didn't. It's more like, oh my gosh, I can.
Yes. It's like, that's one of the things that is like brought me to wanting to work with Mark and Courtney, as well as the work that I've done in Alabama. Like prior to me being a professor, or even how I got back into academia, was I was doing so much, and that's what led to the development of the Entrepreneurship Center. I found myself consulting and helping so many startups, especially student startups or startups in the community, and advising in that way, that I realized that although I invested in companies, the true investment is being able to provide people with that additional knowledge on how to, or connect them to resources that they needed to go to the next level. Then that right there led to the development of the Entrepreneurship Center, that led to the co-founding of Esports AL. Because what ended up to your point, Megan, as you were talking about like what you bring to the table and how long you've been consulting, that's the same thing in reference to what we were talking in your previous question about what would I tell a young entrepreneur. A lot of the times you don't realize, as a person that's a young entrepreneur or entrepreneur in general, when you don't think you're an entrepreneur, you don't think that you have anything to bring to the table. But that of itself, that expertise that you didn't even realize that you had, the thing that you just, oh, I just do that for fun, or I just do this, that right there is your secret sauce, your superpower.
That's the superpower. You don't even know what you don't even know.
Yes.
You have the shoulders at the university, at the entrepreneurial center, the cities, strong cities. It makes all the difference. And we're so excited you'll be joining us for the pitch. We should talk about how you can add some of your superpowers to our program. That'd be really cool.
I would be happy to.
Absolutely. Well, you have not only talked the talk as an entrepreneurial professor, but walked the walk yourself, of course, and co-founding Esports AL is one of those instances. Why don't you tell us, what are your goals there, and what was the reason behind co-founding Esports AL?
Okay, so our goals, I'll start with what was the reason for it. and that would directly tie into our goals. So I met Mark at this event that was being put on through our entrepreneurship center. So it was our entrepreneurship and esports center, and we had this event called Entrepreneurship Week. And at this event, we brought our students into the city to this co-working space, and that's where Mark was doing a presentation because he was included into our Entrepreneurship Week. Now, the background of our Entrepreneurship Week is that we would bring together all of the different organizations in North Alabama to eliminate the silos of the resource silos of entrepreneurship across the North Alabama region, and bring them all together so they could be able to communicate and actually assist people in the different communities in entrepreneurship. So that's how I came to meet Mark. Now, fast forward, Mark and I, we hit it off. He owned Divergence. Divergence is the largest virtual reality amusement park in Alabama, and we started talking along the line of, just like in entrepreneurship, there were a bunch of silos for the entrepreneurship supporting organizations. That's the same issue that we have in esports. It's like there would be an event hosted at one of the universities, but no one in the city would know about it. There would be these competitions, and they would be all siloed off. And then it came to a head, and this is prior to us forming Esports AL. It came to a head when I went to the Esports Business Summit in Vegas, and during a presentation, there was a map, and on that map, it had all of these different locations that represented esports across the country. And Alabama wasn't represented. There wasn't a pin that represented Alabama on esports. Not one. And I knew personally across the state how prevalent esports was in our state.
Yeah.
And so Mark and I collaborated, and we put together a team, and Esports AL was founded, and we developed it from the standpoint of, we have to not only show and support the esports ecosystem, but we have to support the supporting organizations that support esports. And that dealt with STEM, that dealt with educational areas like the development and support of camps, the development and support of esports programs in the parks and recreation centers across the state, and how to be able to help those organizations, or those budding organizations, or even micro entrepreneurs that were interested in developing an esports or a gaming type of business, help them have a support system where they can be able to flourish. And that is how that came about.
Yeah, that's great knowledge and awareness of the space, and to see that so much is happening but nobody knows about it. How frustrating, right? I can imagine. And all this work is going on, people supporting that passion, but the lack of validation there of people being aware of it due to all of these silos. And then you went and did something about it, which is very, very commendable. I would love to get your take on education and esports. I think one of the fastest growing aspects of the space right now is scholastic, right? We're seeing all these high schools take on teams. We're seeing youth leagues happen as well. But when we look specifically to the educational and the workforce skill aspects, I think that's where parents have a lot of interest, because they see the very positive aspects. That's where a lot of brands can see interest, because rather than trying to do the typical B2C model of, I put my logo up, I put on advertisements, and you buy my potato chips or whatever. I think there's a deeper integration that's more meaningful to the experiences that needs to happen. Speak a little bit about how you and Esports AL have really embraced and effectively championed education alongside esports.
So one of the key elements, of course, our baseline that we have set up has been through education. We partnered with um, we've partnered with organizations that supported homeschool networks and micro schools to be able to help integrate STEM and STEAM work into the curriculum of people in homeschool. And that is near and dear to me because my high school years, I was homeschooled. And
Mm,
it one of the biggest elements is how do you provide that additional support where we can bring in subject matter experts that also happen to be gamers and show that through line between gaming, the development of games, all the different pieces and components of gaming, and how that can directly connect to developing your career in the tech industry.
yeah.
And it allows you to start taking these building blocks, putting them together, and saying that everything that you want to be able to do can be found within the realms of gaming.
Yes. Well
And
said.
I think ultimately, and this is why education is so pivotal. A lot of one of the things that I I saw recently, and it was from I think it was a academic journal, but I also saw that same picture from this academic journal utilized and I guess tweaked by I think NASEF. NASEF is based out
Mhm.
in Georgia, but in it showed all the career pathways of all the potential jobs that can stem from the esports industry.
Mhm.
And what it showed is that it wasn't just the different careers. And one of the things that I love to see in that visual representation of it is that you now see what you would need to study, what are the things that would aid in that path. And
Mm.
so for the work that we're doing with Esports AL, we're more so creating the environment and partnering with these budding organizations that can support it. So we partnered and helped this organization called Game Design Club. They already were established, but partnering with them allowed us to be able to push their efforts into other places that more people in these underrepresented communities and under resourced communities would be able to have access to um learning opportunities like that. Same thing with Studio Polycraft and their development of 3D assets. A lot of the times, these students, there was a student that created, I was told this by the founder of Studio Polygraph, but they created an otter and they sold the otter for $30. And
Mhm.
hundreds of thousands of people bought that otter. And it was just something that they designed like a skin for a
Yeah.
game. And so one of the different things that I'm seeing when you're looking at the educational piece, more than any other sport, more than any other thing, esports basically gives you that tangible connection directly to the career pathway that you might be interested in or that you might have the aptitude to be able to succeed in. And I think that's one of the beauties of working within esports and gaming.
Yeah, those careers are not all within the esports industry either, which I think is a huge point to make, is
Yes.
we're not just saying, hey, this billion-dollar industry that is growing, having some market corrections, but we believe long term is going to be, massive growth that you can be working alongside people competing and playing video games and parents don't understand it. It's no, every skill for the workforce of today and tomorrow that innovative companies are hiring for that we will need, these skills directly apply to many different careers in many different types of industries. And yeah, you may get involved in the esports industry specifically, but you might get involved in all sorts of different things, which all need technology and the skill sets that gamers possess.
Yes. One more thing that stood out to me that I would like to add, going back to what I was referencing in regards to the Unity, being a Unity authorized training partner, what stood out to me was all of the different options that the skill of getting this Unity certification led to. Like, for instance, can go into modeling and simulation, you can go into architecture, and some of the organizations that we're hiring was vehicle plants. Like, we have a lot of car plants where they do all the manufacturing for the cars. We had government contractors that was providing support that dealt with radar and things like that, that was associated with the development and the visual representation that was that you use Unity for, and creating these types of sandboxes to be able to test all of these different elements. And those are the same systems that you would see on the back end as a game engine for these games that everybody loves to play. When you're thinking about the physics of how things are moving, so on and so forth, the math that goes into it is like, you get so interested by seeing that when you're playing the game, but being able to actually manipulate that and translate that into a job that has nothing to do with the direct gaming industry in and of itself, makes it even more worth it. You can go into any industry because of video games.
Yeah. Yeah, that's incredible. And I just love those aspects of gaming, and not just that it's fun for youth, but that there are all these opportunities to choose it and to chase it, and it's not wasted time. It's not just, oh, you're wasting your times in front too close to a monitor, sitting down and not walking around enough. Of course we preach balance and everything, but there's a future here, parents who are listening. To pivot on that point, it's wonderful that so many people have these opportunities through gaming, but it's unfortunate that not everybody has opportunity. I know that equal opportunity and championing those who are underrepresented is a great passion of yours. What are some of the steps that we can take as a community to help make sure that we are representing everyone and providing equal opportunity?
Well, one thing, and this is one of the things that I love about gaming, is that it doesn't matter where you're coming from. Gaming makes everything very accessible. Like, it's like, I love the fact that Sony created controllers that made it that anyone, no matter where you are, what you're dealing with, is accessible to anyone. And that's just one aspect of gaming. And so one of the things that stood out to me that I think has been extremely important has been the ability to work with organizations to create environments for students. I mentioned earlier the Parks and Recs department. Not everyone is able to buy a fancy Alienware type computer, but partnering with organizations like the library, partnering with the Parks and Recs department, partnering with the YMCA, helping to boost their programs and bring in resources, and so that anyone could be able to actually compete and participate, will be key into making sure that these resources flourish within these communities. The second thing is, and this is actually what's been one of the most important pieces, because of course, making sure that all these communities have access to this hardware and software is important, but this is something that actually got me into it in the first place. So going back to what I was mentioning, this last year, I think it was October, I coordinated with one of the organizers for the Esports Business Summit in October. And I was in the discussion, we talked about the idea that when we showed up for this event, there wasn't any representation. So the theme this past October was about Gen Z. And so prior to that event taking place in October, we had a discussion that we need to be able to actually bring the people that we're discussing and talking about, not just the people that write the checks and things like that. We need to bring the people that we're targeting to these events. And so that's been a major push. And thankfully, through the collaboration with the Esports Business Summit and community, we were able to bring students who would have never gotten an opportunity because it was financially out of their reach. We were able to cover their costs and get them to attend these conferences. And that's the biggest piece, because you can create the environment all you want, but what happens when the resource is in another city? What happens when there's a huge competition like DreamHack, or like where you're having all of these events and we have the best player, like the best Smash player, but he can't afford to go over 3 hours away to compete. So our biggest push is not only making sure that these community centers have what's needed, these organizations that are open, that allow for people in the community to be able to compete and just collaborate and play the same way that you would with basketball or any other sport. We wanted to make sure as Esports AL that we help these people, anybody, get to these events that are open to them. And that's been our push. And I think that's what sets us aside.
And that is why we started the chapters. We had to. I mean, we literally, and it has not been, we're early in the process, but we had no choice, really. It just didn't make sense that headquarters was only here once a year in Chicago.
Yes.
We needed to rewrite the playbook, and it's nothing I've ever done. And it was something we kind of dragged our feet on, but the industry demanded that. And it's probably I think it might be the hardest work we've done, John, but the most rewarding. We'll be crawling to the event this year.
Well, whether you're flying, driving, or crawling, we look forward to seeing you there.
We do. We're
Julian,
so excited.
you've expressed a lot of different things, during this podcast episode, which I greatly appreciate. I mean, it's just time flies when you're having fun here. But, the entrepreneurial nature of esports, some great advice for young entrepreneurs, developing that mindset to be able to take you down that road. Everything, obviously, you're doing at Oakwood University, in addition to Esports AL, the educational opportunities, how we can provide equal access and representation. What is my last question is, what's the best way to get a hold of you? I know you've got so much more to share, so I want to set you up here for people who want to understand more about what you're doing, or what is esports in Alabama all about, whether they want to hear about it or go see it in person with you. I encourage everybody to do that. How can people get in touch with you?
Well, of course, they can reach out to me via email. It's like I try my best to respond immediately as I get these emails. But the best way, and I think this is how Megan and I got connected, was through LinkedIn.
Yeah.
I love LinkedIn, and it's because LinkedIn ended up being the great equalizer, great connector of all of my different interests. So I was able to make connections, whether it was in the esports or cybersecurity or entrepreneurship. Like those elements allowed me to be able to grow my network and be able to assist the communities that I wanted to work with. And so I would say the best route to reach me is via LinkedIn.
Fantastic. Well, look up Julian Waddell. He looks like this.
He sounds like this.
Actually, if you go on LinkedIn, it's like just search for Julian B. I made it so easy for anybody to find.
That's great.
It's just Julian B, or if it's Ideal Wingman. So you know how you go www.linkedin with it's like / I think IN / then the name, it would be Ideal Wingman.
I like that.
I do too. Very good. Very clever.
You are clearly the ideal wingman when it comes to understanding esports in and throughout Alabama and beyond. So, Julian, we appreciate you being here. We look forward to seeing you and your fellow entrepreneurs at Esports Next in Chicago. And thank you for joining us today on the Esports Next podcast.
Thank you for having me.